when all the social media kicks in. So we're just going to wait for that to happen. It also is a little bit slow. Hello, everyone. My name is Max McGillivray from Beanstalk Global. We'll do the formal introductions shortly when we've got the proper okay to go. But thank you for joining the TANZ webinar broadcast on navigating the road to net zero. And I think all of our social media lights are now live. This is good news. We've put some money in the slot today. Everyone, could you turn off your videos and I'll bring you back in a minute. And let's see who's the last one to turn. We're all off. Hello, everyone. My name is Max McGillivray from Beanstalk Global. It's a pleasure to have you on today for what is going to be a very important webinar broadcast. And what's the title of today's broadcast? It's TANZ Webinar, Navigating the Road to Net Zero, the Whys and Hows. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and also Facebook. And we'll also have this on a podcast because we want to get this message out to many people as possible. We're Beanstalk Global. We're a media platform that works with key organizations in the UK and internationally to promote key messaging about key subjects of the day, navigating the road to net zero, the whys and hows. Are you ready to embark on a transformational journey that can help reshape the growth of your business or charity in a way that's going to ensure a more sustainable world for our children and our grandchildren? If the answer to your question is a resounding yes, then we invite you to join with us on our first net zero webinar on the TANZ West Northants Project. This is your opportunity to be part of something extraordinary. This project is more than a project. It is a mission launched in partnership with West Northants Council in September 2023 and funded by the prestigious UK Shared Prosperity Fund. This 2-year project is set to put the commercial activities of local, small and medium-sized enterprises and charities on a more sustainable footing and on the path to accelerated growth. On this first broadcast, we will provide crucial information and knowledge and insight into how you can attain net zero and secure a more sustainable and profitable future for your own organization. You will take away key understandings on how the project is well positioned to transform your commercial operations, making them eco-friendly and more efficient so as to realize the financial benefits of sustainability. And our agenda for our 1-hour webinar broadcast today is going to be very straightforward. I'm going to bring in our key panelists in a minute to be introduced to you. We're then going to have a presentation from Ebenezer for about 10-15 minutes to really lay down the subject matter of this project, and then we're going to turn it over to yourself. We want to hear from you. You've got a number of key experts on this broadcast today, and they're here to answer your questions. We've already got some questions already in, but we want to have your input. The more input that we can get from you, the better. And as I always say with these type of webinars and broadcasts, for this to be a success, I'm keen for you all to leave knowing 5 things that you did not know before that are going to benefit you and your business and your organization for the long term by being associated with this TANZ webinar and broadcast. So let's get all of our panelists in and get them introduced. So can everyone come in and turn on your video and your microphones, please? So Martin, let's start with yourself, please. Who are you and who are you representing?
Hi, I'm Martin Wilson. I'm the Sustainability of West Northants Council, and we're partners with the university on this project.
Thank you, Martin. And why is this important to you, to yourself personally, and also to the organisation that you're representing? Why?
Well, in terms of the organisation representing the council set a target for the whole of West Northamptonshire to be net zero by 2045. Council realises they can't do that on their own, and taking businesses along on that journey is really important, and that's what we hope to achieve with this project.
Excellent. And as well as having, let's call it government support from yourself, Martin, what we need is educational support. Amin, who are you and who are you representing, please?
Hi, Max. Hi, everyone. My name is Amin Hosseinian Far, and I'm a professor of systems thinking at the University of Northampton.
And Amin, why are you involved? What's your involvement with today, please, and the project?
Well, thank you for that question, Max. As mentioned by Martin, we are partnered with the West Northamptonshire Council to support businesses, a number of businesses within the region. First of all, to raise awareness, to help them to calculate and measure the CO2 of their business, and of course help them to set targets and come up with action plans that can help them to move towards carbon neutrality.
Excellent, Ben. Thank you. And again, that's why I'm so pleased that we've got this impressive lineup of experts for you all to learn from. That if we've got the likes of Martin with the council understanding, the likes of Amin with the educational understanding, it's going to be very beneficial for all of us. Dilshad, do you agree? And who are you, please? Who are you representing?
I'm Dilshad Sawa, Associate Professor at the University of Northampton, and I'm representing the university today. I'm very much engaged with this project, and I think it's just so important to do research, to make a difference, and I think this is what we're doing together with the link with the council. Thank you.
Well done, Dilshad. I think you and I have said this before, that one thing that you and I've learned over the last 3 years of doing very similar broadcasts is collaboration. If we've learned one thing over the last 2-3 years of desperately trying to avoid the word the pandemic, that the more that we work together, the more that we can make a success and turn perceived negatives into far-reaching positives. Simon, would you agree? And who are you representing, please?
Yes, I absolutely agree, Max. So yeah, thanks very much. My name is Simon Derrick. I'm head of sustainability at a local company called Blue Skies. We make fresh cut fruits, but I'm also founder of an organisation called the Sustainable Business Alliance, and looking to support this fantastic project based on all the experience and skills that I've developed with Blue Skies to help local businesses to venture down the road to net zero.
Thank you, Simon. And I just have to pull you up on one thing. Everyone, Blue Skies and Simon are a very modest business. They do so much good in the UK and internationally. They have sites in, help me, Simon, Brazil, Ghana, Benin, Egypt, South Africa, and back in the UK, and the way that they operate within the fresh produce sectors is one to behold. They in effect created social enterprises before social enterprises became a thing. So if you want to find out and track a business that's doing good in the UK and internationally, just have a look at Blue Skies Fresh Produce. And over to Dr. Uber. Who are you and who are you representing, please, sir?
Hi, Max, and very, very excited to be here. My name is Chijioke Oba, and I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Northampton with expertise in environmental psychology and small business and sustainability. So that's who I am.
And why are you excited? Why do you think we need to have that shout about this, have this sort of platform, and educate everyone that's dialed in? I'm just looking at the numbers. We've got over 1,000 people now dialed in on the likes of Zoom and LinkedIn and the other platforms. Dr. Uber, why do we need to get this message out? Why?
First off, I mean, I'm excited. If you recall, just before we started, we talked about how discussions around net zero specifically is now mainstream. The era or age of climate skepticism is gone. So that is exciting in the sense that there is this recognition that collectively we have to do something, because collectively we are responsible to have a clean and a safe planet, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. So having this initiative get to this point where we've made so much progress and success in terms of what you see now. We are talking about this, but beyond talking, we are going to go into action. And that's largely what we're going to discuss today. And that is so exciting.
Well done. I love your smile when you say that we're going to go into action. So everyone dialed in, remember, we want you to go away having learned a minimum of 5 things from this broadcast today. So last but not least, let's turn over to Ebenezer, because Ebenezer's going to introduce himself, and he's also going to run through a presentation that's going to put more, what's the expression, Ebenezer? More meat on the bone. Ebenezer, who are you and who are you representing, please?
Yeah, thanks, Max. And hello to everyone on the call. My name is Dr. Ebenezer Lai. I'm an associate professor at the University of Northampton. I also chair the Sustainability Local Innovation Partnership Agenda Hub, or SLIPA, which is working directly with the council to deliver this project. SLIPA sits within the University of Northampton, and myself, together with all my colleagues, are working on this project within SLIPA as a hub. And of course, that hub sits within the much larger sort of research infrastructure within a research center that we have at the University for Sustainable Business Practices. And what we're looking to do with this particular project is, as my colleagues have said, to provide research and knowledge exchange support to help businesses and charities to decarbonize and to make progress on the road to net zero. And it's really exciting to be here, Max, with you and with colleagues and with everybody on the call and everybody watching on social media as well, to talk about this very important subject of net zero.
Okay, and just to drive this home, why is this important, please, Ebenezer? Why have we all got to partake in this and look to create this difference? Why?
Well, a number of reasons, which can be summed up, I think, and encapsulated in a simple fact that we've reached a point in human history where we cannot continue as we are when it comes to our commercial activities. The fact of the matter is that we need to do more to put our commercial activities on a much more sustainable footing in order to ensure that we can continue those activities into the future. If we do not, then we're going to be in a situation where a lot of the commercial activities that we undertake today just will not be viable anymore in the future. And so it's really a sharp contrast in terms of choices, in my view. We've got to do something. We've got to do something now. And I think that really sums up why this is, so very important.
Yeah, Ebenezer, well done. So Ebenezer, just before we move over to your presentation, there's looking at the dials, we've got some 1,500 people dialed in now, especially for those of you on Zoom. We'd love you to participate. As you listen to Ebenezer's presentation, if you have questions of our panel, whether it's just very simple questions or complex matters that you'd like to discuss, let's have your questions in so that we can pose them to our experts, so that we can all learn from all of us, whether that be the panel experts or those all dialed in on the likes of Zoom and the other social media. Ebenezer, would you like to commence your screen sharing? I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping. Can everyone turn off the videos and also turn off the mics, and I'll call you back in when we get to that point of time. And Ebenezer, all over to you, and we can see your screen successfully.
Excellent, thanks, Max. Yes, so what I want to run through today is a series of slides. Hopefully, and definitely, I'm hoping that I won't be deaf by PowerPoint. But just to set the stall for our discussion today around net zero, particularly what navigating the road to net zero entails, and this presentation will focus on why and how. So the whys and the hows. Why is it important, and how do you do it in a nutshell? And I think as I'm going through this presentation, you'll begin to see a snapshot, a bird's eye view of what the TANZ West Northants Project is about and what we're trying to achieve, working, of course, in partnership with the council, with funding from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. So just to talk through sort of the bits of the content, we start off with an explanation of what net zero is. And then looking at the timeline of the UK's 2050 net zero target, and then obviously coming from there, we'll look at why net zero is important in terms of the climate angle, and then also the business angle, and then finally, just the final slide will be or series of slides, I should say, would be to talk about how you navigate your way, so the how. And obviously that will then round off the discussion, and we can sort of go into a Q&A session. So moving on into net zero. What is net zero? In a lot of circles, a lot of people think that net zero means zero carbon emissions, and that's not what it means in effect. Of course, the goal is to get to zero carbon emissions. So in an ideal world, we would be reaching for a point where we're not emitting any carbon at all. Now, some might say that that's not possible, whilst others who are fairly optimistic might say that it is possible. But nevertheless, regardless of which side of the fence you're on in a discussion of that nature, the idea is to get to zero carbon emissions, but to get on the journey there. Now, what net zero means is effectively that you have to have a balance between the greenhouse gases that you emit and the amount that is removed from the atmosphere, right? So greenhouse gases are removed from the atmosphere through a process that is often referred to as offsetting. So this is the idea of compensating for emissions that occur elsewhere. So what people might do as part of their offsetting plans is that they might, for instance, plant trees, or they might invest in carbon capture technology, where they would capture some carbon out of the atmosphere. Of course, carbon capture technology is very expensive. There aren't a whole lot of businesses that can do that. So usually you would find most SMEs obviously investing a lot in tree planting, or undertaking projects such as plastic waste collection, for instance, as a way of taking carbon out of the atmosphere in order to try and achieve that balance. So that's what offsetting is. Now, in order for net zero to be effective, it has to be permanent. And what that means is that the focus has to be on reducing carbon emissions. And that's important, because if you've got an approach to net zero that is not based or focused squarely on reducing carbon emissions over time and persisting in that reduction, then what you end up with is a situation where, as a business or as an organization, you are emitting a lot of carbon, and you continue doing that, and then you might say that, well, it doesn't matter because we're offsetting that carbon in this or that way, and that's not effective, and frankly, it isn't net zero, because the whole objective of net zero is to bring carbon emissions down so that you reduce the emissions that you can reduce, and you offset the ones that you can't. And that has to be, the approach. Right. So this on to talk about the UK government's 2050 net zero target timeline. Of course, this was this became a huge subject matter within the news recently. We all recall the announcement, some of the announcements from the government a few months ago around some net zero targets, not the 2050 target specifically, but some other targets related to the 2050 target. And so this is an important thing, for the UK government. And just to talk you through a timeline of how the UK government reached this particular target. And whilst doing that, of course, I'll make reference as well to West Northants Council's own target of 2045, also as I do this. So the journey started really in 2008, when the UK passed the Climate Change Act. So this was a piece of legislation that committed the UK to reducing its greenhouse gases emissions by 80% by 2050, right, compared to 1990 levels. So the original target was 80%, not 100%, of greenhouse gas emissions, to reduce them by 80% by 2050 compared to 1990 levels. Right. Fast forward, then comes December 2015. December 2015, in the sort of the net zero calendar or timeline for any country, is an important point, because it was in that month, in 2015, when the Paris Agreement was adopted during COP21 at the UN Climate Change Conference in Paris. And of course, this was an international agreement that set out very, very clearly that the aim was to limit global warming, ideally to a 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold compared to pre-industrial levels. And the idea, of course, at the time, as it is now, is that if we're able to keep it at 1.5, then we would, as a global community, avoid the harshest effects of climate change. And recently, we've seen studies that have come out to say that we're sort of in danger of going beyond that 1.5 threshold. So moving on from 2015 came another landmark moment in October 2018, when the UK's Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, published a report saying global emissions need to reach net zero by around 2050 in order for that 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold that had been set in the Paris Agreement to be achievable, right? And so, of course, that was a reinforcement of what the UK government has set out to do originally in November 2008 by passing the UK Climate Act. And then in May 2019, what happened was that the UK government asked the Climate Change Committee, what is often referred to as the CCC, to make a recommendation on how the UK, together with the devolved nations, to make a recommendation as to how they could achieve their long-term targets for greenhouse gas emissions. And the CCC recommended that the UK should aim for net zero emissions by 2050, and it should go to 100%, not just the 80% that had been set out in the UK Climate Change Act in 2008. And then it made some further recommendations around the devolved administrations. So, for instance, that Scotland should implement a net zero date of 2045 as a reflection of the overall plans for the UK. And it made similar recommendations for Wales as well as for England. And so you would find that for the most part, a lot of local authorities in England and Wales and in Scotland have their own sort of net zero targets within that 2035, 2040, 2045 region. And so, of course, that's the link there. And then fast forward to the furthest point in the timeline that I have on this slide, June 2019. In that month of 2019, the UK government signed into law the new net zero target that had been recommended by the CCC in May of that year. And that's the target is to reduce emissions by 100% from 1990 levels by 2050. And this replaced the original target that was set at the beginning of this timeline in November 2008 from within the UK Climate Change Act of reducing global gas emissions by only 80%. So just this gives a sense, a summary, a bird's eye view of where this target came from, and also the fundamental basis for it. And this explanation is important because it helps to demonstrate to commercial actors, the need for obviously taking action when it comes to net zero and to progressing, on a journey to net zero in a serious and sort of a very focused way. So moving on from there, just to talk about why net zero is important, looking at the climate angle, so that sort of the climate reasons. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this part of the presentation, but it's just to set out what the picture is at the moment in terms of where we are with our environment globally. So this is a heat map from the NASA Earth Observatory, and it's a heat map of global temperatures from 1930 to 1934. And you can see at the bottom of the map, there's a temperature anomaly scale, which essentially allows you to identify areas where there have been changes in temperature compared to previous years. So, for instance, the redder the patch on the map, that tells you that there's been sort of a temperature anomaly or an increase in temperatures for the period 1930 to 1934 in that part of the world that is greater than what existed in previous years. And so this is the 1934 picture, and then this is the 1980 to 1984 picture. And again, you can see that it's getting hotter. 2000 to 2004, much hotter than the two previous heat maps that I just showed. And you can see that the areas of the map where you can see the red tinge is getting deeper. That tells you that there is a greater temperature anomaly in those areas. This is the global heat map from 2010 to 2014. This is obviously of notable difference to the previous heat maps, particularly because you can see a concentration of heat and greater temperatures. So in terms of the temperature anomaly, concentrated in the northern hemisphere, particularly in the North Pole. And that's significant because obviously that results in the melting of sea ice, the rising of sea temperatures, but also a sort of a destabilization or a gradual destabilization of the North Atlantic current, which has all sorts of implications for weather in the Northern Hemisphere, but also in other parts of the world. And that has implications as well in terms of exacerbating and consistently producing bouts of extreme weather. And then this is the heat map from 2015 to 2019, which is even sort of hotter, and you can see that concentration sort of in that area in the Northern Hemisphere, particularly the North Pole. And you can see that, of course, it's getting hotter. And then this is the map for 2021. And when you put all of those maps together, this is what you essentially get. You can see a gradual sort of warming over the years from 1930 up until 2021. And you can see that for each of these heat maps, the temperature anomalies are much higher than the previous sort of years that you're seeing. And so this warming trend is undeniable, right? It's accelerated, and of course, it's exacerbated by our commercial activities. This does not represent a normal climatic warming process as we have seen in other parts of the Earth's history. This is something different. And it's obvious and it's clear that commercial activities are driving this this warming. So what about obviously the last slide I have on this, or the last heat map that I have on this slide, is for 2021. What about the current year that we're in? Well, this is the heat map for 2023, which is of course striking, extremely striking, right? Because it's much warmer than all the heat maps that you've seen me show so far. And on the right, you can see the graph that sets out the warming trend, right? All the way dating back to the 1880s, all the way to 2023, the current year where we're in. And so you can see that there is a constant uptick. It's going higher and higher, and it's getting warmer and warmer. right? The NASA Earth Observatory has come out to say that July of this year was the hottest month in terms of global temperatures since records began. And September 2023 was also the warmest September on record as well. So this trajectory is unsustainable, and from a climate angle, we can't keep going like this. So we've got to do something, to put commercial activities on a much more sustainable footing. And then coming off from the sort of the climate reasons, you've got the business angle or the business reasons. And net zero is important because it makes business sense. It's about growth, and it's about adaptation, and it's about helping businesses to situate themselves, properly to grow into the future. If you're running a business, of course, you want to make sure that your business is there for the long term, right? And you can even have that business grow to be a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth generation a business. But of course, the climate change threatens all of that. And so net zero is important from the business angle because it makes business sense. And also it provides growth. And that's the important thing. There are commercial benefits, there are community leadership benefits, there are competitive benefits in terms of competitive advantage, and there are supply chain benefits. So from the commercial benefits, I think these are all straightforward, right? You can make a lot of cost savings if your business is doing well when it comes to net zero, because you use less energy and your processes are much more efficient. So that's cost savings. You have an enhanced reputation as well. People respect you because you're a business that is committed to net zero and doing well when it comes to net zero. And that's good for you in that business space. And of course, there are resources and bits of collaborations that are open to you if you're a business that is, or an organization or a charity that is on the path towards net zero and doing well on that path. There's also the community leadership aspect, right? You've got a positive community impact. People in the community respond to organizations, businesses and charities that are doing well in net zero because they understand that these businesses and charities are doing their part in helping to preserve the ecological environment, to ensure that it is there to support the livelihoods of not just those of us who are obviously alive now, but our children, our grandchildren, and their children after them. And also there's local recognition and trust, right? Local people trust local businesses that are doing well when it comes to net zero and reducing carbon emissions. And the names of those businesses are names that stick in the mind because, of course, in the time that we live in today, everybody cares about the environment and making sure that we're doing the right thing and that we're getting on to ensure that future generations can look back on what we have done and they can say that we did not let them down. And so because everybody cares about this, any business or any charity that is doing well on net zero has that recognition and trust. And of course, there's that aspect, of course, of strengthening local partnerships as well. There's also the competitive advantage in the sense that businesses and charities that are doing well in net zero attract investment. They also attract innovation, as well. Then there's also the supply chain benefits. So, for instance, new business opportunities, tend to come to businesses that are serious with net zero and are making progress on it. And there's research that actually supports that. Then there's also risk mitigation, right? Climate change and environmental issues such as extreme weather events, they can disrupt supply chains, as we've seen. By transitioning to more sustainable practices, your businesses and your charities become more resilient to these disruptions. And I give you an example. I recently had a chat with a local business, that obviously shared a few details about how they were able to avoid, much of the very high energy prices that the country had to suffer recently and is still suffering, because they made the transition to much more sustainable sources of energy in the sense of solar paneling, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just an example there. And then there's obviously also supplier resilience. A commitment to net zero can encourage suppliers to adopt more sustainable practices. And so when your suppliers adopt more sustainable practices, that makes them more resilient and dependable partners for you, which means, because of course they're much less likely, I should say, to face disruptions from external shocks that could impact your supply chain. And then finally, green partnerships, right? A commitment to net zero allows you to collaborate with like-minded partners, such as those in logistics, for instance, who share your net zero goals. And these partnerships can often result, as we've seen in many cases, in shared innovations, sharing of best practices to enhance your supply chain resilience. So, as I said before, when you put all this together, net zero makes business sense. And the days where it was the held view that sustainability was too expensive and didn't make sense in terms of the bottom line, I say that those days are long gone, because net zero equals growth in your business, growth in your charity, and it's the right thing to do commercially. And to top it all off, this is just a Venn diagram just to explain that net zero, of course, puts your business and your charity to put it in the position to ensure that it is able, to meet all of the increasing requirements for emissions disclosure and net zero commitments from regulators, investors, and supply chain partners. And so with a good commitment to net zero and real action around net zero, you're able to be in that red area shaded in here, where you're able to sort of meet all these requirements, which are becoming more ubiquitous as the years go on and as extreme weather events continue. This is the last slide. You'll be happy to know. So we've talked about the whys. Why is it important? We talked about the hows as well. Navigating your way, right? This is the how. How do you navigate your way to net zero? Number one, you set up a net zero policy that is smart, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed as well, which is important. Number two, understanding the basics on carbon emissions, the scopes. So there are three scopes when it comes to carbon emissions: scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So scope 1 are your direct emissions from things like the vehicles that you use as a business or as a charity. Scope 2 are your indirect emissions from purchased energy, so your electricity, your gas, your heating, etc. And then, of course, scope 3 are any other indirect emissions that occur in your value chain that you do not necessarily control or own. So these are processed products, outsourced activities, your business trips, etc., waste management, water use, etc. And of course, this program will touch on those as well. Then you've got to collect relevant emissions and waste data, which TANZ will help you with. You've got to adopt innovative tools to analyze that data. So as part of this TANZ project, we're developing an open source carbon calculator to help you to do that. You've got to develop a clear action plan. We'll be running workshops around action planning. You've then got to transition to green technologies and processes. And as part of this project, there may be the opportunity for funding sources to be opened up to support businesses to transition to green technologies, whether it is solar paneling or whether it is other technologies on a much smaller scale, such as changing light bulbs around the office and things like that, or engaging more sustainable water systems. And that funding, of course, we're looking to the future for it to be unlocked. But of course, being part of this project puts you in a position to be eligible for that as and when it comes. And then adopt, finally, a good sustainability reporting practice or practices. And of course, there'll be support provided on this project for that as well. And so when you put all of these together, this is what the TANZ project is about. We've got the expertise, we've got the resources to be able to help you to do all of these things and to navigate your way, to net zero, to achieve the how. And so, let TANZ help you with all of the above. And with that, I'll hand back over to Max for any questions and for the rest of the conversation.
Ebenezer, well done very well done. I'm just looking at some of the key points and some of the messaging I've already had in Ebenezer. That I think when we see the warming trends maps, and we've all seen it, but we need to see it on an ongoing basis, especially the 2023 map, to realise how frightening it is. But can I say this? There's always a positive from a perceived negative if we can all join with you and learn from this project. The likes of the new business opportunities, the green partnerships, as you state, net zero makes business sense, but you got to be in it to be part of it. Everyone, do you want to just on my panel? Do you want to just turn on your video and microphones, please? Just had one question in whilst you were talking, that one of the people dialed in is very keen to see if there's a record of this broadcast so that they can share Ebenezer's presentation to the rest of their team. Yes is the answer. You can go on to any of the social media, or if you're on Zoom, contact us on the contact details and we'll send you a record so that you can share it within around the rest of the team. So we don't have a lot of time, so we're going to make this quick pace. And again, if you've got any questions, please send them in on Zoom or on social media. But we've already had some questions in. Amin, let's start with you. Key objective of the TANZ Northants Net Zero program. Amin, what are the key objectives, please?
Yeah, thanks, Max, and thank you, Ebenezer, for that presentation. I think the key objectives were to some extent summarized within the presentation. But in a nutshell, what we're trying to do, we're trying to help businesses in the West Northamptonshire region to be aware of net zero, to help them to measure the current emissions, and of course help them with action planning and trying, as Ebenezer articulated earlier, to set smart objectives, very specific, time-bound and measurable objectives in relation to reducing the carbon emissions, and of course, in the journey towards net zero.
Excellent. I mean, well done. Thank you. Simon, how can we need some base details here? How can businesses enroll on the program, and what are the benefits of businesses and charities by engaging with the program? Please, Simon.
So yeah, I believe you can enroll on the Slipper website, and there are many benefits of enrolling and getting involved. Firstly, is that support and help and assistance in terms of being able to measure your baseline emissions. I know different organisations are at different stages of their journey, but for many, this might be as called the first venture into actually how do you go about measuring your emissions, and we'll help you to do that, and then building action plans around that as well. So understanding where are the hotspots, where are the opportunities to reduce your emissions, and of course, we can help you as Armin said to develop action plans that are achievable, that are smart goals, to be able to make progress and demonstrate progress on that journey to net zero. And of course, there are many benefits, as Ebenezer alluded to. Obviously, not just the sort of the technical requirements and the ability to demonstrate progress towards net zero, but all of the benefits to your business, whether it be obviously aligning to the upcoming mandatory requirements, whether that be sort of legal requirements or requirements within your supply chain, but also looking at reputational opportunities. But the big one is where there are opportunities to gain efficiencies, to reduce costs, whether that be in reducing energy consumption, and other areas like that. Reducing your waste, reducing your use of water, can certainly obviously help your bottom line for your organisation, as well as obviously demonstrating progress to net zero.
Simon, thank you. Duration of the program?
You want to jump in? 18 months. So
Martin, thank you. Go on.
Finishes in end of March 2025.
Okay. And Martin, whilst we got you on, key features of the program, level of commitment, financial implications. Do you want to just give us the elevator pitch for it?
Well, the first commitment is time. We need people, businesses who are prepared to commit for the duration of the project. In terms of cost, we're trying to keep that to a minimum. The university are developing a carbon calculation tool, which will be available free to anyone who joins the programme, along with their advice, which will be available free to everybody who joins the programme. So really all we're asking of businesses to put aside some time and that's why we started with webinars to break people into the idea of joining these sessions. Put aside some time to join us on this programme, and we can help you as much as we possibly can to achieve a quantifiable reduction in emissions.
Excellent. Well done, Martin. Everyone, there's some really interesting questions already coming in. There's some quite specific ones that might actually take some of the panel to just answer them directly. So, panel, if you could just have a look at those questions to see if you can help with any of those, that'd be much appreciated. Engagement with the initiative. How can we present this so it's going to positively contribute to the local community and broader society? Dilshad, what's your view on that? How can we use this to benefit the local community? Dilshad,
I think thank you, Matt. I think it's really important to look at the aspects of working with the local community to ensure there's progress in developing a cleaner environment. There's potential health benefits. Looking at community resilience with the work that we're doing, embracing sustainability measures, and in essence, working on ensuring that we're working together with the council and local businesses for renewable energy sources and energy efficiency, creating more of an effective infrastructure that enhances the resilience of the community and the environment challenges that we're experiencing.
Well done. So in effect, we just got to participate, and everyone can benefit from that. Dilshad, is that correct?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, and really interesting question just in on WhatsApp. Will participating charities and businesses have the opportunity to collaborate? We were talking earlier about collaboration, how it's so key. Will participating charities and businesses have the opportunity to collaborate or network with other organisations in the programme? Martin, over to you, please.
Yes, they will. Part of just move this out of the way so I can see myself. One of the aims of the project is that although businesses will work individually on their own emissions, we want to give them the macro picture so that they can see what they can achieve together. So it might be that a number of businesses achieve small reductions by themselves, but when you put that together and look at it as a total reduction across all the businesses which engage with the project, you'll see that they can have a much bigger impact on the emissions from West Northants.
Yeah, well done, Martin. And Martin, just to segue that in, had a really interesting comment in, I've got my particular view on it, but someone has stated that although I'm already trying to reduce my business carbon, one of Ebenezer's slides mentioned saving money, but my experience has been increased costs. Martin, what's your take on that? My view is that we're just at the start of the journey. And if you look at technology, when it first comes in, it's expensive. But then as the, let's call it the niggles are ironed out, the price rapidly drops. And we've already seen that with the likes of solar panels on a commercial basis. But Martin, what's your view, please?
An example I always use is LED light bulb changes. So people can change to do something as simple as change to LED light bulbs, which will be a small outlay initially, but you'll save on electricity. Or if you decide to go paperless or reduce the amount of paper you use in an office, you're buying less paper. So a lot of these changes that we're asking businesses to make or suggesting that businesses can make could be small, but would result in a cost saving as well.
Yeah, well done. And we've all got to be, Martin, we've all got to be hand in hand with this. We've got to drive the societal change. There will be some niggles, there will be some speed bumps, but you can see ultimately how it's going to work. I always use, Martin, the electric car example that when I go to large motorway service stations, you can see I think they call them tombstones of Tesla car parking charging points. And 6 months ago, there was lots of research showing that there weren't enough of them, but they're coming now. They're coming on stream. Ebenezer, a specific question for you. Carbon calculated your calculator, how does it differ from other available similar products? Will participating organizations retain access to the calculator? There's a number of different systems out there. Why? It's a direct question, Ebenezer. Why should we use this one?
Yeah, thanks, Max. So the thing about carbon calculators is, you'll find on the market that they're really expensive. And so it's, they're outside of the reach of a lot of SMEs and charities. So what we want to do is to develop something that, as we said, is open source. So it will be available, it will be accessible, as Martin said, free. And in addition to that, we want to make sure that it is bespoke and tailored to the needs of the businesses in the project. And so at some point in our development of the calculator, what we will be doing is we'll be sending out, some surveys to collect some bits of data that will help us to better fine tune it so that it is specific to the needs of the businesses in the project, which is why it's so important to be part of the project, because of course, being part of the project allows us to get that information from you, so that we can make sure that we're putting something to you that is going to be effective and helpful. And yes, that's so those are the two key things that I would highlight, which I think would mean that our calculator will be very supportive and helpful of businesses.
Ebenezer, well done. And there's a great question in from James Locke. Will the goal of the businesses and charities eventually have a rating similar to that of EPCs and potentially be used to provide information to the public?
Yes, so we could get there in the end, but I think that's sort of further down the line. And at this point, I think it's worth me mentioning this. I was going to mention it later on, but of course, what we will do is to provide for all of the businesses and charities that take part in this project to provide some acknowledgement of their participation in the form of a certificate afterwards, which of course will be supported by Slipper, by the university, by the council, and our delivery partners such as SBA, etc. And so that could be, obviously the start or the basis of that sort of thing. And of course, that would be publicly shareable, if I should use that word.
Yeah, well, again, well done. It feels like we're on the start of a journey, but everyone wants to be on the same journey to success. And Dr. Uber, I'm not ignoring you. And I was really keen to get your take on this. In what ways can organizations use their participation in the program to communicate a commitment to sustainability to customers, investors, and or other stakeholders? There's a huge marketing opportunity, as Ebenezer alluded to in his presentation, that net zero makes business sense. But what advice can we give to everyone dialed in, either live or the record, as to how they can use this, that leverage this to the business success, to get more business? What's your take, please?
Yeah, thanks, Max. There are so many ways that businesses could leverage on this to their advantage. I think first off, it's important to note that businesses in let's say councils like West Northantshire, if you look at small businesses particularly, they are very much embedded in their local communities. And what that means is that what they do, their customers, their key stakeholders are very, very likely to see what they do. And in that sense, for small businesses who are tuned into this cause, they don't necessarily need to do so much of an advertising, because the level of embeddedness means that the people around them see what they are doing. They know, for example, that they are trying to be sustainable. They know that they are in it for a good cause. That's one way of doing it. That's one way of looking at it. And not to forget, one of the questions that was previously addressed, talked about ratings. And so for other stakeholders, let's say down the supply chain, I know this happens a lot in countries where there are there are mandatory EPRs, for example. And so what you see is that suppliers, for example, might want to choose and work with companies that have those sort of ratings or that have demonstrated they are doing something in terms of sustainability. And history is telling us that more of that is going to happen. So with net zero, we necessarily will see a lot more regulation requiring businesses to demonstrate what they are doing. Projects like this get businesses very, very equipped because they understand what it is, they demonstrate that they are doing it. And don't forget, we talked about, helping businesses to report what they are doing. So it puts a business, again, from when Ebenezer talked about the business angle, puts a business there in terms of being visible, what they do, ready, and it also opens up doors, like I said, with potential suppliers and a wide range of stakeholders. And it depends on what the business does in terms of their activities, for example. Research has shown that with what businesses can do with sustainability, they can necessarily open up, alternative streams, or they can diversify because they are thinking sustainably. There is a high level, not just benefits, but what they can get back because of how they demonstrate what they are doing.
Well done. A great retort to the question. Martin, you stole one of the questions, as if it's okay. I'd love you just to highlight it. One of the viewers just asked about funding and second round of funding. Martin, do you want to just allude us to the funding protocol and how many tranches there might be, so we can be educated on that, please?
Yeah, so we've used a portion of UKSPF, UK Shared Prosperity Funding, to set up this project. The council is just going out to procure for a second sort of tranche of that funding. When that funding's, when a delivery partner's found for that funding, part of it will be used to provide match funding grants. The details are on the council's website. I don't have them to hand at the moment, but we're expecting that to be awarded sort of just before Christmas, and then that project to start after Christmas. I think it's important to note that the two projects are going to be working together. They're not competitive anyway, and that being involved in this project is a good start towards accessing those grant funding opportunities.
Excellent, well done. And Martin, the obvious question, on the basis that this is going to be a success for you all, because it is going to be, you can just see it with the sort of questions that we got in our panel of experts. Martin, what do you see the future of the programme? And panellists, I'm going to ask a number of you as well. But Martin, what's your view? What's the future of the programme, please? What happens at the end of the project?
Well, we've actually been discussing what the legacy might be, but I mean, the ideal, as far as I'm concerned, is that we could find more funding and keep this going into the future. 2045 is not that far away, and there's still a lot of action for those across West Northants to take if we're going to meet that target of net zero by 2045. So for me, the legacy would be that businesses that become involved talk to other businesses and keep the momentum going, but also that we might be able to find other funding and keep similar projects or the same sort of project rolling for other businesses that come online in the future.
Yeah, it's and some of the work that we've already done with you, some of the businesses, and if it's okay to mention, we mentioned it in the green room, the likes of Aston Martin, a business all very close to you locality wise. The key to their business strategy is all about sustainability. So if you've got a business like Aston Martin and looking at what they do, that they want to create this change by driving sustainability and net zero. So we've got to follow their example. Ebenezer, what's your take on what Martin's just alluded to? What's your desire? What's the future of the program as you see it, please?
Yeah, thanks, Max. And I think Martin is absolutely right. I think from my viewpoint, it is to continue to work as we progress towards 2045 and then obviously to 2050. But I think at the end of this project, we would be expecting to be in a position where we supported businesses and we can see quantifiable emissions reductions after they've obviously taken the steps from their action plan. I say to all businesses on the call, and I say to everyone, we're here, the resources are there, the support is there, we often talk a lot about what we want to do around sustainability, etc. Now is the time. Now is our opportunity, and it just requires us to come together, to commit some time to this project, and to walk the talk, and to do the things that we need to do to make sure that we're passing on an environment to our children and grandchildren that is better than what we inherited. And I think that, for me, that's the main goal.
Excellent. I'm going to drive this point home as we wrap up this this broadcast. We're going to slightly overrun, but I think it's important. Just one housekeeping point. Martin, could you circulate the website details after the webinar of where we can find this on the council site? Martin, feel free to send that to me on email, and I'll make sure it's on all of the records. Simon, what's your view? What do you see the future of this programme?
Yeah, thanks, Max. Well, I see this as just the start, really. I think it'll be a catalyst for more support that can be available for local organisations, more tools, and data as well. I think that's quite crucial as well. As we seek to develop our understanding of what our impacts are as organisations across the planet. We need to be doing more to engage with other organisations, and the only way we can do that is by being transparent, being aware of the impact that our suppliers are having, as well as all the products and services that we are obviously purchasing as organisations, to be able to understand what impact we're having and how we can reduce it. So yeah, it's just the start of hopefully a lot more support that can help organisations to progress towards net zero. An exciting journey.
Exciting indeed. Dilshad, what's your view, please? What do you see the future of the programme being?
I think it's continuous evolution, Max, and looking at growing in terms of what we've started with. So and exchanging that knowledge and expertise to integrate within society, business, governance, etc. And I think this is just a start of the journey. There's a lot more that's obviously that we're working towards doing.
Well done. Thank you, Dilshad. Dr. Uber, what's your take, please? How do you see the future of the programme?
I think what the council has initiated is extremely remarkable. The focus on the SMEs is a massive step, not least because one of the key challenges they have is the resources to be part of this, and so by framing this largely but not exclusively to SMEs, the future is that collectively we'll have all businesses getting involved. If that's on one hand, if COVID taught us one thing, it is the fact that nothing can be taken for granted, and we have to be prepared. This, for small businesses, is a high level. I wouldn't say introduction, but this is a high level equipment in terms of resilience. Resilience for any business that participates. Obviously, resilience doesn't mean adverse things will not happen. It means that when they do happen, you will be better equipped. Yeah. So by partaking in this, small businesses will become a lot more resilient. We've talked a lot about the benefits in terms of the business case, the moral case, but resilience is a key thing. Particularly, we live in a world that is characterized by uncertainty, and you're not sure what's going to happen in the next year. But the more businesses are prepared, ready for eventualities, the better there will be in terms of their overall growth and sustainability. And this is a positive step along those lines from an environmental point of view. Yeah.
Well done. I think your local area, especially with the likes of the university and Martin and his colleagues, it's in some ways unique in comparison to other areas. I just don't see this proactiveness perhaps to the point with other areas. So I think that's going to be very beneficial to you all. Ebenezer, we're rapidly running out of time. Wrap up for us, please.
Yes, thanks, Max. I'd like to thank everyone on the call for attending. Our next webinar will be on waste management. So this will happen on the 5th of December. And so we will send out, of course, the details. I encourage everyone to help us as well to reach your suppliers, other organizations that you partner with within your supply chain, that, of course, will benefit from this support. And if you can bring the information of this project to them, we would be very grateful. Together, we can do something progressive, and we can really achieve the goals that we've set out in the Northampton Sustainability Accord. And so this is our chance, and it's an opportunity, and I say we seize it. So thank you so much for attending, and see you on the next webinar.
Excellent. Ebenezer, thank you. Just to wrap up, I met a South African farmer a number of years ago, and in Africa, there's always lots of changes, lots of turbulence, whether it be political, whether it be weather. And the South African farmer said to me, never waste a crisis, make a plan. If we look back at Ebenezer's slide, especially that 2023 map, we're in a state of crisis, but we can make a plan. Net zero makes business sense, and especially with these partners that you have available to you and that information. So please join, look at all the websites that will be on these social media posts on the recording to be involved. To be involved is going to be beneficial. Net zero makes business sense. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you at the next broadcast with the rest of the team on the TANZ webinar and broadcast. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.